Putazos y Pendejadas Podcast.
What's up, boxing heads? It's David D from PYP Boxing hitting you with some quick flurries. Let's talk about last Saturday. In a shocking upset, Tszyu was stopped by Prograis Murtazaliev in their 154-pound fight. Tszyu was absolutely outclassed by the bigger Murtazaliev, whose performance is even more impressive after having learned that he fought with a broken knuckle on his right hand. Now, as usual, you're going to hear the typical knee-jerk reactions from people saying, I knew he was overrated, but that's a lazy take. Let's get one thing straight. Tszyu was the goods. He proved it over the last couple of years the way you're supposed to, by keeping an active schedule and gradually stepping up your competition. And when you say things like Tszyu was always a bum, what you're really doing is taking credit away from Prograis Murtazaliev's performance. Now, don't misunderstand me, this was a huge upset. And let's be clear, there weren't a lot of people that saw this coming. Even Vegas had him as a huge underdog going into this fight. We all expected Tszyu to handle his business. I didn't look into Murtazaliev much before. He didn't look great in his last fight versus Jack Kulkai. He got hit by the left hook a lot, didn't fight well when Kulkai backed him up, and he had trouble with Kulkai's head movement. But he still stopped Kulkai in the 11th round. In the build-up to his fight with Tszyu, we learned that Murtazaliev trained for Kulkai during Ramadan, where he had to fast during the day, so that partly explains why he struggled. One thing that can't be explained is why Tszyu looked so amateurish Saturday. Was it possible he overlooked Murtazaliev? He showed better defense against other fighters in the past. Versus Murtazaliev, he kept his hands low and showed no respect. Tszyu basically tried to walk him down from the very beginning of the fight. We didn't see that versus Harrison, Mendoza, or Fondora. In those fights, Tszyu was methodical, he used intelligent pressure, moved his head, and was defensively responsible. Now, can Tszyu recover from this? There are two things to consider: a mental recovery and the physical. There were reports that a concussion delayed Tim's flight back to Australia. If he was concussed early in that fight and continued to take more punishment, that could make him more susceptible to concussions in the future. Not a good thing when you're in a sport where getting punched in the head comes with the territory. Then there's the mental impact. Can he put the stoppage behind him? I don't know what's going on in Tszyu's head, but he's obviously taken this loss much harder than the Fondora loss. That was a close decision. He held his chin up high after that fight, but this one takes a lot out of you because of the one-sided nature of it. Now, before we go writing off Tszyu, keep this in mind. Tim's father, the great Tszyu, experienced a similar setback in his 1997 fight versus the rugged veteran Vince Phillips. Ironically, the IBF belt held by Tszyu at the time was also on the line that night. Tszyu would, in a very similar manner, recklessly attack Phillips from the beginning of the fight, ignoring Phillips' toughness and his power. Tszyu immediately got into a firefight with Phillips, who would end up stopping the Hall of Fame fighter in the 10th round. Tszyu never rematched Phillips, but went on to win 13 fights in a row, unifying 3 titles at 140 pounds and having a Hall of Fame career. This doesn't have to be the end of the road for Tszyu, who still says big fights are in his future. There can be no doubt that the 154-pound division is red hot right now, and it's not only the US fighters that are running it. You have Madrimov and Boachuk, 2 fighters that earned a lot of credit despite losing close fights, who are fighting each other next in December. And now Murtazaliev is crashing the scene. There are a lot of interesting fights that can be made in this division with names like Sebastian Fondora, Virgil Ortiz, Xander Zayas, and possibly Boots Ennis. Speaking of Boots, Shakur Stevenson recently said he thinks Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz need to fight each other at 154 pounds, and he thinks Boots washes Ortiz if they were to meet. This was a match we thought we were going to see at 147 pounds, as it was supposed to be the next mega match to crown the new king at 147 after Crawford and Spence closed the book on their rivalry. But it wasn't meant to be, as Virgil's illness and fight postponements ended any hopes of that fight happening at welterweight. Virgil now campaigns at 154 pounds, and Boots has been reluctant to move up because he wants to unify at 147 before he does. Eddie Hearn has not been able to strike any deals with the other belt holders, so where does Boots go from here? According to BoxingScene.com's Lance Pugmire, Shakur isn't the only one thinking about this fight, as Riyadh Season's Turki Al-Sheikh has said he wants to stage a huge card on February 22nd. This card would feature a fight with Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz, with Bam Rodriguez facing Chocolatito Gonzalez. Pugmire also reports that there are whispers of a possible 5 versus 5 card with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom stable versus Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy stable. That would be a hell of a card, but can it be a reality? De La Hoya's been on the record recently saying he thinks Virgil Ortiz versus Jermell Charlo or Errol Spence at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas would be a huge fight, and he's not wrong. Either fight could potentially sell in the Texas market, but the shine is worn off for those fights as both Spence and Charlo are no longer considered top fighters anymore and have been inactive for a very long time. There's no guarantee that whatever version of Errol Spence might potentially be in the ring versus Sebastian Fondora would even win that fight. Jermell Charlo, on the other hand, has not fought at 154 pounds for 2 years now. While Oscar may think those fights are best for Ortiz, do we really expect those fights to happen anytime soon? Looking ahead to this weekend, Regis Prograis faces Jack Catterall in Manchester, England in a high-stakes fight at 140 pounds. A win by either fighter could put them in position for a title shot next. In a recent interview, the 35-year-old Prograis gave a few reasons for his lopsided loss to Devin Haney, where he admits to getting caught up in the hype, talking shit with the Haneys, and losing focus on what he was supposed to do. He also said the extra long camp was a bad idea, which is something I agreed with when I learned he was in camp for about 12 weeks. A fighter his age shouldn't be training that long and risks overtraining, and Regis definitely looked overtrained versus Haney. But there's also the possibility that Regis at this point is a shot fighter. Against Zorrilla and Haney, Regis had a hard time pulling the trigger, which is what a lot of older fighters have a problem doing. Despite all of that, Regis thinks Jack Catterall's style is perfect for him, but I'm not so sure. Catterall is a crafty fighter. He can mix it up on the inside, he can move around and land sneaky shots too, whereas Regis is very flat-footed and can be caught off guard. Regis is a counterpuncher even though he moves forward. If he can find a way to stay busy and not wait on Catterall and keep that jab in his face, he can force Catterall to engage more in order to get his punches in. And that's where Regis can shine. Before the Haney fight, I thought Regis could beat Catterall. So if Regis really feels like he's back, I'm going to go with Regis by decision. I think he gets a couple of knockdowns that help him get a win in a close fight, even on Catterall's home turf. Well, that's all for now, folks. Let us know, what would you like to see next from Murtazaliev? And what do you think of a Boots versus Ortiz fight? Is that something that could happen in the next year or so? And who do you think will win this weekend's fight with Regis Prograis versus Jack Catterall? Does Regis still have it in him to make one more title run at 35 years old? As always, leave a comment with your thoughts and don't forget to hit that like button as it really helps our channel. This is David D reminding you to keep your hands up and your head moving. See y'all on the next one.